Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear Kardec Radio listener. We have a special show about suicide. It's not about sad stories. It's about solutions for the struggles in our lives. That's why we have put together this show. Let us remember that Kardec Radio is here to share good news. Good news, first and foremost, that life doesn't end. Life really goes on. And even for those who cut short their lives, we know they are still living. They are there and they are not damned in hell. No, they are not. Why not? Today we're going to learn more about it. And we're going to learn more with two amazing guests. Our dear Reese Butler II, the pioneering founder of the 1-800-Suicide Hotline and many other good resources out there for suicide prevention. He has a very compelling story and a beautiful attitude before life. He was not held back in the struggles that he faced and experienced himself. He actually took a very beautiful attitude. And we also have our dear friend, Jussara Korngold, who is a spiritist author of the book, Those Left Behind. When we talk about suicide, the American Association of Suicidology and the National Center for Health Statistics survey that suicide is the 11th leading cause of death in the United States. However, it is the third leading cause of death for youth between the ages of 15 and 24, exceeded only by accidents and homicides. And homicide is the 13th leading cause of death. So we would say that more Americans kill themselves than are killed by others. Then we ask, why do people kill themselves? What are their reasons for doing so? What happened to their souls in the afterlife? What is their destiny? And Spiritism has a lot also to share, bring uplifting view on it. Allan Kardec himself, the codifier of Spiritism, he shares that Spiritism can contribute to the progress by destroying materialism and thus making human beings understand where their true interest lies. It can eliminate doubts so that people will understand more clearly that they can ensure the happiness of their future by their action in the present. This is the answer and comment in question 799 of the Spirit book by Allan Kardec. So Spiritism can also save lives because it shows us the way and the reasons to live well in order to fulfill our destiny, to achieve perfection, and the consequent happiness in fulfilling the laws of God. And the Spiritist teachings, it invites us to live joyfully as well. And talking about joy, it reminds us of a story that Divaldo Franco, one of the greatest speakers of the Spiritist movement, shared with all of us on the importance of feeling joy in life. It was a true account that is shared in one of his talks that talks about living joyfully. And he says that once there was a man who felt no joy in life. He decided to commit suicide. Thus, he placed himself under a tree. Once he was there, he started nagging about life, saying, "Life is cruel. There's no meaning in life." Suddenly, a child showed up running towards him and said, "A rose for you. I have just picked it up for you." The rose was not pretty. It barely had leaves. But the man replied, "Very beautiful." The child then said, "But I want to give it to you. I've picked it up for you." Because he wanted to return the rose to the child. And the man thought, well, if I accept the rose, then the child will go away. Otherwise, this child's going to be seated here all day long. So the man said, "Fine, give it to me." The child's arm did not move at all. When the man looked at the child, he was shocked. The child was blind, but she lived joyfully, and he did not. The child then said, "See how beautiful this one is. Smell its perfume." The child then left to pick up another rose and give it to somebody else. The man was so deeply moved that he reflected, "Oh, God is unsurpassed. He came to bring light to the eyes of one who could see in order to prevent the life to be transformed into darkness. This is one of the stories of many people who are unsure about the reasons why staying in this life. But there are many people who think about cutting short their lives, especially in the current crisis in the world and specifically in the United States of America. Many people are out of jobs with their lives totally transformed, thinking what they're going to do. So we're going to bring to you right now our first guest, Reese Butler II. He has a beautiful story, and we say this because he has a story of life, because we know life goes on in the afterlife, and we are here with many opportunities to help one another in the struggles of this life. And Reese Butler II has a lot of experience that he can share with us and illuminate our path. So in moments of crisis, if we are experiencing them, he's going to share the many resources that are in the United States of America, and also he's going to give us tips how to access these crisis hotlines and resources in other countries as well, because, you know, Kardec Radio is in more than 42 countries. And not only that, but he's going to be here with us, inspiring us. Reese Butler II is the current president of the board and CEO of the Christine Brooks Hope Center. After losing his wife, Christine Brooks Russell, to suicide on April 7th, 1998, Reese founded the Christine Brooks Hope Center and the National Hopeline Network, 1-800-SUICIDE. This 1-800-SUICIDE is everywhere and elsewhere. He's going to talk about the Hopeline.com as well. And he received training in suicide intervention skills training. Later, not only he volunteered, but he helped to launch several other organizations, such as the National Council for Suicide Prevention, the California Suicide Prevention Advocacy Network, and the Virginia Suicide Prevention Council. He is also the president in the President's Advisory Board of the Postpartum Support International and in the committee for the Iris Fund Alliance. He has a lot to share with us, and we're going to welcome him with a big embrace from us and the audience from Kardec Radio. Hi, Reese. Thank you for joining Kardec Radio.
Good morning, Doctor. It's a privilege to be on your show.
Thank you for being with us, and we're so impressed with your story. And would you like to share with us a little bit more on how you got into this beautiful missionary work that you're doing?
Sure. I certainly didn't choose it. I've always said it chose me. About a month after Kristen's suicide, a check from her work, a 1-year annual death benefit, arrived at my door, and I had no idea that even the company that she worked for. And I looked at it and I decided this was not my money. This belonged to preventing the tragic deaths such as Kristen's, specifically dealing with postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, and the issues, mood disorder issues that women faced. And so I hired a consultant because I was still in my, serious grief period and had no way of vetting any credible organization. So I hired a very expert consultant to go out and find somebody doing work in this field. And she came back and told me after several weeks that there was nobody doing any work in this field. And I said, well, what about like a national suicide hotline? There's got to at least be that. And she said, everybody I talked to says there is one, but nobody seems to know the number. And I said, well, go back out there and don't come back till you find it. And so she went out, and a couple weeks later she came back and said, I have talked to over 100 medical professionals, clinicians, and every one of them says there's a national number, but nobody knows the number. So I decided at that point either it's the worst marketed number in history, or in fact there really wasn't one. And in fact there wasn't. So the business that Kristen and I had before her tragic death was a newspaper in the San Francisco Bay Area called the Bargain Classifieds. And our phone number was 1-800-free ads. So I called our telephony provider up who provided that number to us, and I said, hey, who's got 800 suicide? And they said, oh, the black hole. Well, that's a euphemism for the sex phone industry. And I said, well, well, who's got 888 suicide? And he said, oh, that's available. I said, well, reserve that for me, please. And he said, well, Reese, we can't do that anymore. I said, why not? He said, well, the FCC passed a rule saying you can't hoard telephone numbers. You actually have to have them ring somewhere, make them live. So I said, well, fine. No one knows the number. Just bring it to my home. No one's going to be calling it, right? There's no national hotline. So literally the next day when it went live, the phone started ringing. And it rang 10, 15 times the first day. I'm like, who had this number before? I'm figuring it's some business or something. And I answer the phone, click. I answer the phone, they hang up. And it didn't make any sense. Why would you be calling a toll-free number and then not even bother to find out if it's what you're looking for? And so I started to answer the phone empathetically as we planned to call the organization the Kristen Brooks Hope Center. I answered and said, Kristen Brooks Hope Center, how can I help you? And the first time I did that, a woman in a halting voice said, what have I reached? I explained how Kristen died. I explained that I was starting this hotline, but we weren't live yet. That it was ringing, but it was ringing in my home. And she said, well, I'm sitting in a hotel up in Seattle, and I have a pile of pills, and I just want to know that my kids at home are going to be okay after I kill myself tonight. And I'm like, I cannot believe this. And I said, look, I don't know what to say or do other than tell you, please don't do that. Your kids will not be okay. I can assure you of that. And I said, would you do me a favor and let me get somebody on the phone who knows what they're doing? And I called the Covenant House in New York, and they had a program called the 9 Line. And I asked them if they would be willing to talk to this woman, and I patched them in together. And for 2.5 hours, those two lines were lit. And the next morning, I get a call back from this woman in Seattle. She says, I just want to thank that woman who was on the phone last night for 2.5 hours with me. I'm back home with my kids. I have an appointment with my therapist, and I just want her to know she saved my life. At that point, I felt like the boy with a finger in the dike. I couldn't pull it out, and I had to keep this thing going. I never anticipated starting it this way. But here we are 13 years later. Over 5 million people have called the hotline. We have over 10,000 medical rescues. So it's been an amazing journey, and it all began with that fateful death benefit check and, my background in marketing.
Yeah, what impresses the most, Reese, is that you felt the pain for yourself, but for everybody else who also feels this feeling of being left behind and hopeless in some way. So it's what we call the compassion feeling, right? That really moves you from your own pain to everybody else's pain out there, including the ones that are thinking about cutting their life short. So specifically, we know depression is one of the main factors that lead people into making such decision or thinking about it. Nowadays, through the many millions of people that have been calling, I bet there are lots of statistics out there and specific works, resources to help out. Can you share more with us on the resources that exist so people who listen to this program can learn about it and share, and if they need one day, they can also not only need for themselves, but for others or even volunteer? What is out there, Reese, for people?
There's quite a bit. In the U.S., we have over 1,000 community-based crisis hotlines. Most of them take volunteers. You can find virtually all of them at our website, hopeline.com, HOPELINE.com. Around the world, there are over 1,000 of these hotlines in over 100 countries. And you can find that listing also at our Hopeline site under Get Help Now, and it's for Befrienders International, and the website is befrienders.org. So you can both volunteer and they need help. They need volunteers, as well as if you know somebody who needs resources in their local community. If you call any of those hotlines, especially where they're in the country or the community where you're located, they know what the local resources are in terms of, like, support groups. One of the difficult things being a survivor, losing, a parent to suicide, a child to suicide, a sibling or a spouse, is being able to sit with other folks who have gone through the same thing and not be judged or feel they can't talk about the issues openly. So peer support groups, survivor support groups are a great resource. There's a lot of online resources as well, because a lot of people don't want to go face-to-face. And we even have counselors that are online. So you can actually do therapy sessions via the Internet.
Like in a chat form?
You can do everything from a video camera where you're sitting there with a therapist who can see you and you can see the therapist, so you can actually see the genuine empathy or not in their eyes, and they can see the pain and hurt in your eyes. Or you can just do it by telephone, or you can do it by chat, texting. You can even do it by email. So whatever way somebody wants to receive help and support, it's out there. And it's amazing. We have over 70,000 volunteers just in our network alone that answer calls and chats and emails. It's just an amazing group of empathetic people. And I've often said I wish everyone could feel the pain and suffering of someone who is suicidal for just one day, because if you knew how badly they felt, and that's why they end their pain by killing themselves, that we would all be empathetic and the world would be a far better place. Yeah,
and how are there statistics out there to tell us how efficient these resources of prevention are? I know they are, but people often. Sometimes I'm a psychologist myself, and many people are resistant, to find help, especially when they need help the most. They feel resistant to find help for themselves. So going from this desperate moment, this crisis, into the next step, it takes some bit of effort, right? Do
Absolutely.
You think is there enough exposure out there already for people to know about these resources, and how efficiently are we reaching out to these people?
We're not. I would say, statistically speaking, less than 10% of the people that need these resources are either aware that they exist or, as you put it, have any faith or belief that they could get any help from it. We actually had a study done of our network back in 2002 through 2004 at a cost of over $3 million by the federal government. A number of universities participated: Columbia, Rutgers, and a university in Canada at Montreal, the Reese Institute. And what they discovered was that 85% of the people who call our hotline network had a positive outcome at the end of the call. In other words, they had less anxiety, less depression, less ideation of suicide at the end of the call than they did at the beginning of the call. 10% of the people, there was no change, neutral. 5%, there was actually a worse condition at the end of the call, which we've taken steps to address. The reality is that the 90% of the people who don't call hotlines don't know what they're going to experience on the other side of it. We do need to do more in terms of education, awareness of what the resources are and how effective they can be. There's a documentary called Reason to Live, and you can, again, find that on our website. A wonderful documentary done by the folks out of Dallas, MediaProjects.org. And it actually was done in a hotline setting, so you can see and hear what people are calling about and how they're being responded to. So it demystifies and destigmatizes the issue of calling a hotline for help. It really is an amazing reveal for somebody who's never called a hotline and is curious and doesn't know what to experience.
That's interesting. So there is still a lot of work ahead of us, despite the much you have been doing, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's so much that needs to be done, and as Kay Redfield Jamison famously once wrote, the gap between what we know and what we do is lethal. And so the thing I would say to all of the listeners is, if you have a loved one that is suicidal, learn the warning signs. We have a program called QPR, Question, Persuade, Refer, and it teaches you how to ask the question if someone is suicidal. It teaches you how to persuade them to get or accept help, and it teaches you how to find that competent help. And one of the amazing things about that study that came out wasn't just the 85% was a positive outcome, but why there was. And you as a psychologist will appreciate this and relate to this, and that is, if at the beginning of the call, the caller has a good connection with the call taker and believes genuinely that call taker, that volunteer at the other end, really genuinely cares about them and their living and to reduce their pain, then you're going to have a good outcome at the end of the call. If you do not have good call connectivity, if the call taker cannot express empathy, and as you know, in the profession of mental health, it's pretty much drummed out of you in school that you're supposed to remain emotionally distant from the person in crisis. And what we learned is, if you don't care about the person who's suicidal and you don't genuinely convince that person that you care, you're not going to have a good outcome. And to me, that was, wow, we had to spend $3 million in over 3 years to find out that you have to care about people to prevent suicide. That was the only common factor. It didn't matter if you did a good risk assessment. It didn't matter if you were an interventionist versus a non-interventionist. What mattered was that you cared about that caller. And to me, that was just amazing.
That's interesting, Reese, because when you talk about caring, we've got to know through neuroscience that we're wired, we could say this, we're wired for compassion, for altruism. There are areas in the temporal lobe that are activated when we feel altruistic, that we feel that we are in somebody else's shoes, that we need to reach out to them. But the main question is, can we train ourselves to get there? And I know you have different resources out there for people who want to not only to receive this help, but want also to join forces, because probably to reach out to the 90% of people who are out there and don't have their hands on this, maybe we need a bigger army of people, of volunteers, to learn how to be there and rescue or reach out to those people. So what would you say mainly about tips and hints for people who feel compelled to prepare themselves and be a volunteer in these hotlines, etc.? What would be?
We have all the training that a volunteer would need online, so they don't even have to leave their house or their place of work to get trained. We have a 1-hour training course they can take online, and then we have a highly specialized 40-hour training course for folks to become a online suicide intervention specialist. And all of that can be found, again, on our website at Hopeline.com. They can just click the volunteer button, and it takes them through the registration process and then takes them right through the training if they, after reading about the frequently asked questions about becoming a volunteer, if they still feel compelled to prepare and become a volunteer, they can. And they can do it online. They can do it in a local brick-and-mortar crisis center. It doesn't matter. And you're right, we need more. We need an army. We need, instead of 70,000, we need 700,000 because, there are billions of people in the world, and we lose over 1 million people a year that we know of by suicide each year. Over 1 million that is documented. And that is a travesty that certainly there's no way God wants this to happen. So we, the rest of us, need to be empathetic, need to get trained, need to volunteer. And the other thing I always say is it would be wonderful if everybody volunteered for one day, anything, I don't care, a soup kitchen, helping the homeless, whatever that day of volunteer, just force yourself to go do it. You may think you're going to hate it and it's going to ruin your life. Go do it, because what you just said, Doctor, about the altruism and how we're wired for it is so true. It is actually the most selfish thing that we could ever do for ourselves, because when you volunteer and you actually genuinely help somebody, you do get a rush. You do feel good. And no amount of money in the world could buy that happiness. And most people are unhappy because their life doesn't have purpose or meaning. And by volunteering, your life can now have that purpose and meaning. And wow, what a great gift to give yourself. And in doing so, you're helping the world be a better place.
Yeah, wow, very inspirational. So we need to reach out to others. Reese, we have here one caller. She's actually a neuroscientist and also a spiritist at the Spirit Side of Baltimore. She would like to ask you a question. She's on the phone with us.
Great.
Hello.
Hi, Yasko.
Hello.
Welcome to Kardec Radio.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Mr. Butler. I'm so impressed to hear from you that 90% of potential suicidal, they don't know about the existence of programs or help like of your organization. So you talk about volunteering, but I was thinking if officially the school system should have some kind of talk or officially put it there in their curriculum in order to make the children or the adolescents and the question is how early they should be aware of this kind of potential, suicide. And that they can be in such a problem, if it's not directly, but some friends or some relatives. So don't you think the school should have something more official in their programs?
Absolutely. And in terms of what age, since we know that we're losing children as young as age 6 and 7 to suicide, where they're leaving notes explaining why they're ending their life, there is no age too young to learn of resources and support and what to do if you're feeling like this or you know a friend who is feeling like this. It isn't like sex education. It really is important that as young as age 6 and 7, we're providing these points of support. But we don't even train them in middle school or high school what to do. We are rebuffed in terms of bringing in these types of gatekeeper awareness training programs into the schools, and it's all a result of a study that was done back in the 80s, which was a flawed study that said, if you talk about suicide, you're going to cause it. It was out of context. You can't just talk about suicide without having the resources and the skilled folks on hand, but you certainly can talk about it when you've got those skilled folks trained in your school. So you go in first and train the trainers. You train the teachers, the administrators, the school bus drivers, the lunch ladies, and then you go in and you train the students. And that way you've got a wrap around these kids. Every adult that they come in contact with is trained and is not afraid to ask the S question, which right now they are. They're definitely afraid of it, especially in the public school system. It's so hard to get suicide prevention training into the schools. They don't want it. They fight it at every even Columbine.
Why so? Why that difficulty to accept this huge problem that indeed exists?
There are a number of reasons, but the two critical ones are liability. If you actually do train all your folks to be able to prevent suicide and you fail to prevent it, you now have created a legal liability that they don't want to have on the books. But that is to suggest that by not training anybody that you're not liable, and we're starting to see lawsuits occur when suicides happen and the administrative staff and counseling staff are ill or poorly trained. So that argument is going to go away. But we're in that tough spot between the period of time where it was a standard of care that you could not prevent suicide to now where we know that suicide is preventable, and getting that paradigm shift to occur hasn't happened yet. And the other major component that schools resist putting this training in place is they really just fear that by putting the training in place, they're actually going to cause suicide. It goes back to that study in the 80s It's just ignorance.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Yasko, so much for these great questions. And Reese, we are deeply touched, and we would say to our audience there is a lot to do, and they should jump in and help. If they can, if they need help, the resources out there, mainly Hopeline.com and Christian Brooks Hope Center as well. So we know you have to go for now, and we are so honored that you had this time devoted to Cardiac Radio. Please share your final thoughts for this day with us, for those who are out there, either in need or willing to reach out to those who are in need.
Absolutely. I wish now that before my wife's tragic death that I had learned what I know now. Back then, I never, ever thought that she could die or would die by suicide. If anybody was going to die between the two of us prematurely, it would have been me. By the grace of God, I was saved, and tragically, her life was lost. What I would say to everybody is number one, suicide prevention is everyone's business. And number two, you don't want to wait until your loved one, your child, your sibling, your parent, your spouse dies by suicide, or your best friend dies by suicide. Because when they do, if it does happen, and 60% of all of us will know somebody that we care about in our lifetime die by suicide. So the chances are real high that you will lose somebody in your life. So before that happens, get the training. Spend the 1 hour learning how to prevent suicide. There's a wonderful book, Suicide, The Forever Decision, written by Dr. Paul Quinet, the same doctor who created the QPR program. Mm-hmm. I persuaded him over 10 years ago to give the book away free electronically online. He said, "Why would I do that?" I said, "Paul, you'll end up selling more books in hard copy than you ever imagined if you give it away for free." And so far, we have actually given away over 1 million copies of the book in an electronic format. So you go to our website, hopeline.com, HOPELINE.com, and on the top left, you'll see Get Help Now. Click that button, and the last link on that page is a free copy of that book. So I recommend to everybody, download the book, read it. It's fun to read. Hard to believe with a book like that title. It would be fun to read, but he looks like Ernest Hemingway. He writes like Ernest Hemingway, and he's got a great attitude about it, and I highly recommend it, and it doesn't cost you anything. So read the book, get the training, and care about somebody by showing them that you care, by saying, "Hey, I'm in this fight with you." If they say they're suicidal, you say, "You are not alone anymore. You now have somebody to fight the good fight with, and I'm not leaving your side, and never give up on them." That's
And Reese, we are here. God bless you for all your efforts, and count on us, because we are here with you, the Spiritist community in the United States and everywhere and elsewhere in the world, joining forces with you in all the forms that we can to continue this fight. Thank you so much for being with Cardiac Radio today.
And thank you for having me on, and thank you for the great work you're doing and providing this forum. I hope to be back again and take more calls from your listeners.
Great.
And I hope I can report next time that thousands of volunteers signed up as a result of Cardiac Radio. So when you do sign up as a volunteer, please do put in the subject line, "I heard you on Cardiac Radio," so I can report back to the good doctor that her work helped save X number of lives through the volunteers that came through your radio network. Again, Thank you so much for having me on, Dr. Anslani.
God bless you. Thank you so much. So, dear Cardiac Radio listener, here we are. So much. It's so inspirational, despite the odds of suicide. Can you believe it? 1 million people a year cut their life short. And there are children of 6 and 7 years of age that are leaving notes to parents and find their ways out of this life. We need to help out. If you need help, you've got to know. There is hope. There's the Hopeline.com. And the Spiritist community, as of today, is being called to a major action. Not only in the United States, but everywhere and elsewhere in the world. There are other crisis centers out there let us join forces because we know that life goes on. We can't stay here on our comfort zones in the spiritist centers only for those who already found help. We need to go out there and reach out to those who don't know that there is help. Not only that, they know there is help, but they don't believe help is out there. We need to reach out to them. We don't want them to suffer in the afterlife. So let us go to our first break, and we'll be right back with much more good things, good resources for all of us.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Join us every Thursday live, Evolution in Two Worlds, a journey of the soul through the teachings of the Spirit Doctor, Andrea Luis. Connect at www.tvcei.com, Channel 2.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Enrich your spiritual senses and deepen your foundations of Spiritism with the book, What is Spiritism? By Allan Kardec. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediceiofamerica.com today.
And now we return to our program.
This show is about Suicide Hopeline. We've just had with us the honor of having Reese Butler II. He lost his wife in April 98 to suicide. But he didn't stay there, crying, feeling sorry for himself. Of course there was grief, which is natural. It's a physiological mechanism. But he also reached out to people who were feeling just like his wife did. And we know Kristen is not dead. We know. We know she's still living. We know that she is not damned in hell because people tend to say, and the church has always said that once you committed suicide, you're in hell forever, for eternity. We're sorry to say to those who believe this is really out of reasoning. Because if you commit even if it's a crime before the gods of law, of God is caring, loving. He's forgiving. He's never going to abandon us in this crazy place that people call hell, because hell doesn't exist. Hell is this infinite feeling of uncertainty, and we can live hell here and now, not only in the afterlife, but here and now. And in the book Heaven and Hell, Allan Kardec explains how can we understand this mindset of having these eternal punishments for decisions that were taken and have limited consequences, because they do have limited consequences. In the CD, that is a talk that was given by Dr. Raul Teixeira, the spiritist medium and speaker, renowned internationally. In 2005, he gave an amazing talk entitled Unfolding Our Spiritual Nature, Path of Harmony. The Spirit Side of Baltimore published these in a CD format, all in the English language. We were at the School of Medicine, the University of Maryland, and there he explains, answering to a question by one of the people in the audience, what happens to people in the afterlife. Jussara Korngold very soon is going to be brought into the show to tell us about the Spiritist view on suicide. And there he says, people will spend at least like 200 years after they committed suicide to repair the damage. Still, it's a limited consequence. We're not going to be there burning in hell. These are the good news. And Kardec Radio here is here to send you the good news, to bring to you the good news. We have a lot of good news for all of us here. One of them is actually that, in this, at the end of September, it's September the 25th, we're going to have the third Spiritist Forum of New York, with the presence of the renowned Stephen Pulse. He's going to talk about it's good to be good, the science of being good. And then in October, at the end of October, we're going to have the first Texas Spiritist Symposium in Dallas, Texas. And then in 1 more week in Canada, there will be a Spiritist Week in Toronto, Canada, in which we're going to speak in, and many others. And then in November, at the beginning of November, there's going to be the third Medical Spiritist British Congress in London. Many people from all over the world are going to be speaking there about the bridging spirituality and medicine. And on November 19th, we're going to have the first Spiritist Seminar of Chicago. A lot of good things out there. But did you know that Kardec Radio is now in 42 United States? We have 50 states. We need to bring it to the other ones. So here's a challenge for you, dear listener. Let us bring Kardec Radio to the other states of the United States. The states that still don't have listeners are New Mexico, Wisconsin, Maine, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Nebraska, South Dakota, and North Dakota. If you know anybody in these states, call them. Share the good news about Kardec Radio. Let's light up the whole United States with Kardec Radio because we are here to share good news. This past week, the United States experienced a lot of hardships, from earthquakes to Hurricane Irene. Thank God nothing more happened, although few people here and there, and some thousands are still struggling, and we're praying for them. But there's more to come because our planet is in transition, a transition that is going to touch the emotions of all of us. So the Hopelines for suicide are out there, and the consoling view of Spiritism and suicide is out there as well. So we know that Spiritism is everywhere and elsewhere, just spreading all the more the good news. 2 weeks ago, we participated on the 6th actually, Auto de Souza Spiritist meeting in Marlborough, Massachusetts, and our friend Flavio Zanetti was interviewing a few people with their feedback on the amazing event that they had, which was without charity there's no salvation. We're there to open the event with a talk on the science and the joy of visualizations, a very Spiritist view and resource on it. And then many great speakers from Brazil and other places on the United States to share the good news. Let's listen what our participants had to say about the event.
This is Flavio Zanetti from Kardec Radio. We are here live at the Alta Souza Fraternal meeting in Marlborough, Massachusetts. And I'm here with Kevin Emlinger, who tells us a little bit about the event.
This is a wonderful event. I've learned lots of insight into Spiritism, into visualization, into charity. Lots of wonderful people here. Great activities, great classes. Highly recommend coming back. I'm going to come back again next year.
I'm here with Caro Mendez. Please, Caro, what do you think about the event today?
Well, I've been coming here for 5 years now, and every year it gets better and better. And today was another, I've either helping out with the little kids and my own teen class. It was, you learn everything every time you come in here. And today was definitely, it gets better and better. That's all I have to say every year.
You see, Kardec Radio listener, we have many good things. The event was amazing. It was at a Best Western hotel. Several rooms were being reserved for adults and for children as young as, believe it or not, as day zero. They had activities for babies, for toddlers, for elementary school kids, and so on and so forth, to youth and adults. When we train our kids to think about immortality, we're preventing suicide as well. It's one of the ways in which Spiritism can help. Jussara Korngold is going to be here with us to talk about her book, Those Left Behind. Not only that, we're going to talk a lot more. She's going to teach us a lot of things. in which Spiritism can console our hearts, the ones that left, the ones that stayed. But just to illustrate the ins and outs of suicide, we're going to show to you right now a true account that was reported by Allan Kardec in the Spiritist magazine, and in the issue 13 of the Spiritist magazine, we republished it. The story about the inhumane baker. Dear listener, listen to this and get the inspiration from Kardec's teachings.
The Inhumane Baker, Suicide, Allan Kardec. In the February 4th edition of the Constitutional, there is a letter from Krefeld, Rhenish, Prussia, dated January 25th, 1862. This letter contains the following story. A poor widow, mother of 3, enters a bakery and insistently asks to buy 1 loaf of bread to pay at a later time. Since the baker is refusing to sell it, the widow reduces her order to half a loaf, and finally to only 1 pound of bread to give to her hungry children. The baker still refuses, turns his back to her, and goes to the rear of the bakery. Believing she is not being seen, the woman grabs a loaf of bread and leaves the store. The theft, however, is immediately uncovered, and she is reported to the police. A police officer visits the widow's house and sees her slicing the bread to feed her children. She does not deny the theft, but apologizes, explaining that she was in dire need. While criticizing the baker's cruelty, the agent asks her to follow him to the police station. The widow tells the officer she needs a moment to dress up and enters her room. Because she is taking too long, the agent, already running out of patience, decides to open the door. The unfortunate widow is lying on the floor, flooded in her own blood. The same knife she had just used to slice the bread for her kids put an end to her days. This news was read in the February 14, 1862 session of the Society, and the participants proposed the evocation of this unfortunate woman. However, she spontaneously showed up during the same session and gave us the message that follows. It happens quite frequently that the spirits of whom we are talking appear in our meetings spontaneously. Beyond a shadow of doubt, they are attracted by thought, which is a form of implied evocation. They know we think about them, and they come. Then they communicate if the occasion is appropriate, or if they are able to find the right medium to do so. Accordingly, we understand that there is no need for a medium to be around, and not even a need to be a spiritist to attract the spirits about whom we care.
God was good to me. I come here to thank you for your kindness. Unfortunately, facing the pain and the hunger of my dear children, then thinking to myself, since I am powerless in feeding them, and the baker refusing bread to those who can't afford to pay, and since I had no money nor work, I thought to myself, die, because when I am no longer with them, people will come to help them. And such has happened. Today, public charity has adopted these poor orphans, my dear children. God forgave me because God saw how my reasoning faltered and saw how desperate I was. I was an innocent victim of an ill society, highly disordered. Ah, you should thank God for giving you the opportunity to be born in this gorgeous region of France, where charity searches for and alleviates misery. Pray for me, so that I soon can repair the fault I committed, not from being a coward, but from motherly love. Our protector spirits are very good. They comfort me, fortify me, encourage me, and tell me that my sacrifice was not unpleasant to the Great Spirit, that under the eye and the hands of God rules over humanity's destinies.
Poor Mary, medium, Mr. D. Ambel. After this communication, the spirit of Lemenius gave us the following assessment of the event being analyzed. This unfortunate woman is one of the victims of your world, of your laws, and of your society. God judges souls, but also judges the times and the circumstances. God judges the forced actions and the despair. God judges the heart and not the appearance. I dare to assert this unfortunate woman died not through crime, but through decency, through fear of disgrace. This happens because where human justice is relentless, it judges and condemns the facts. Divine justice sees the intimacy of the heart and the state of the conscience. It would be desirable that in certain privileged natures a very useful gift could be developed, not for the courts, but for the progress of some people. This gift is a kind of somnambulism of the thought that frequently uncovers hidden things. But humans, still habituated to the current of life, neglect and attenuate these things because of their lack of faith. It is certain that a medium with such capability, examining this poor woman, would have said, "This woman is blessed by God, because she is unfortunate. And this man is cursed, because he refused to give bread to her. O God, when will all your gifts be recognized and put into practice? Through the eyes of your justice, the one who refuses the bread will be punished. For Christ said, 'One who gives bread to one's neighbor gives it to me.'" Lemenius, medium, Mr. A. Didier.
Dear listener, the story is sad, but it tells us the laws of life. The laws of life are such that we need to be very aware that sometimes we're the one pushing people to the edge of madness and suicide. Question for us now: what can we do to relieve people's pain? We're talking here, there is a chat room participant who is talking to us about emotions, about anger, about the fact that sometimes we feel so enraged that people think that we are either suicidal or homicidal. So we would say emotions are, let's say, they come from instinct, as said in the Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec. So we need to take care of our emotions. We need to work on them before they mount to these difficult decisions in which we are creating harsh consequences for us and for many others. So we would say, if we have a difficult time dealing with our emotions, don't punish yourself. Do not feel that you need to punish yourself because you're an angry person. On the contrary, be kind to yourself. So that in practicing kindness towards yourself, you're going to conquer your own heart. We need to work on anger management, but from a more spiritual perspective, knowing that these came from a conditioning from previous lives. So if you are out there and you're experiencing this, hardships at emotional level, prayer, meditation, visualizations, and studying Spiritism can be a great training for anger management. But we're not here. The good news is that we're not here to be angels. This life is all about being a true human. Emmanuel, in one of the books that is not yet translated, through the hands of the amazing Chico Xavier, said, Vinha de Luz, the book, he said, real humanity. That Jesus came here to teach us what it is to be a real human being. Many people get confused that we are here to become angels. No, we are here to become human. Jesus came here to show us what it is to be a human being. He was and he is the guide and model of a true human being. So when people say, oh, the bar is too high. You know, when I think about Jesus, we still haven't understood Jesus. Because he said, my pathway is light. It is easy because it's the pathway of love. So we need to study more, to meditate more, and pray all the more to get out of this. We're going to go to a short break and come back with Jussara Korngold. She's going to be with us here telling about the Spiritist view on suicide.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Spiritist Network, your gateway to on-demand Spiritist videos. www.spiritistnetwork.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Now in English, the book And Life Goes On by the Spirit André Luiz, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediceiofamerica.com today.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
The Spiritist Magazine is a trimestral digital periodical that publishes the latest news on the Spiritist thought and the movement in the USA and worldwide. Subscribe now at www.spiritistmagazine.com.
And now we return to our program.
This show is about suicide Hopeline and the Spiritist view, the consoling Spiritist view on suicide. And in the first part, we had the honor to have Reese Butler II, who is the founder of the 1-800-Suicide. After these immense distress in his life, when 13 years ago, his wife, Kristen Brooks, Russell, cut short her life due to depression. There are many people out there, and he said to us that 1 million of people a year commit suicide in the world. And children as young as 6 to 7 years of age are already committing suicide and leaving notes to their parents. Why? Why does this happen, and what can we do? He called us, the Spiritist community, to reach out. If you go to Hopeline.com, you're going to see the many resources for you to become an advocate, a volunteer. You don't need even to leave the luxury of your home to help out and reach out, because we need more people. Only 10% of people who feel in this crisis of suicide find resources such as the ones created by Reese Butler II and many more. We need to join forces. We needed to be an advocate, a volunteer, just like Jussara Korngold. Jussara Korngold is this friend who is a Spiritist. She's the president of the Spiritist Alliance for Books, a non-profit organization that has the sole aim to promote and disseminate the Spiritist philosophy in English, as codified by Allan Kardec. She is also one of the founders and directors of the Spiritist Group of New York, located in Manhattan, New York City. She's a third-generation Spiritist from Brazil, and she has many other volunteering work happening at Brazil Child Health in New York since it opened in the year 2000. She's also, as a member of she's the vice president of the United States Spiritist Council, and she's also in the executive board of the International Spiritist Council. She has a lot of things working in parallel, but today we want to talk to her about her book, Those Left Behind, Understanding Suicide from a Spiritist View. Thank you, Jussara, for joining Kardec Radio again. Thank you for being here with us.
Hi, Vanessa. Thank you so much for having me again this time, and I'm very happy to to give any contribution that I can to help preventing suicide.
So, Jussara, in 2006, we had the honor to write the foreword of your book, Those Left Behind, and you published it. Can you share with us the reasons why you decided to compile specifically this book, Those Left Behind, for people that are in this experience of suicide and those who were left behind?
Oh, suicide was something that always shocked me a lot. When I was 13 and I lost a friend to suicide, she was just 11 years old, and I couldn't understand why someone would cut short their lives. And I mean, especially at such a young age, she was a pretty girl of a very good family, and I mean, think that she had it all, and all of a sudden we got the news at the school that she had jumped from her building, and it was so shocking. I think this experience remains with me until today. From the studies of spiritism, I started to try to go deeper and deeper and see what would be the triggering causes, the things that were going to lead us to think about that. And then when I started thinking about writing this book, also a friend came to me and said, you know what, we need a book about suicide, especially for the youth today. They seem to be so desperate in trying to understand their role in the world and to cope with the so many stress and self-doubt and confusion and uncertainties by the fact of growing up. And it was when I said, you know what, I think I should do something and try to write a book from a spiritist perspective, because I realized that in English we have many books that deal on the aspect of suicide, but that would be the first one that would tell us more from the spiritist perspective. And so not with the aim only to scare people, because I also had in mind all of those that had lost loved ones through suicide, and they had to find a consolation through the book as well.
Yeah, we know that famous story by Allan Kardec that once he was in his house and somebody knocked on his door and gave him a book. When he opened, it was the spirit book, and there was this letter about the man who was about to jump from a bridge. And then when he placed his hand on the bridge, he found the spirit's book, and he said, please keep this work, because this is saving lives. So would you say, Jussara, based on your experience and based on what you've researched to put together this book, that spiritism can really be a preventive measure for suicide?
Oh, definitely, because one of the main causes, the greatest causes that we have on suicide is actually incredulity, materialism, and doubts about the spiritual life. And so spiritism can come and tell us that none of that actually should be a part of our lives, that actually life goes on, that we are an eternal spirit, and that we are going to have as many lives as necessary for us to grow, spiritually speaking. And if we, through spiritism and through the understanding that we have from the spiritist philosophy, we can actually start grabbing this idea that we are an immortal being, that we are actually walkers of the eternity, and that we are actually going through challenges in life that are necessary for us, to go up and to improve ourselves. So this is actually a very important thing for us, and that's why I believe we have to spread the spiritual knowledge and to start reducing the amount of materiality in the world.
And Jussara, yes, go ahead.
the spirit Joana de Angelis through the medium Divaldo Franco also said that the cause of all evils that are present in the world today is due to the absence of a more spiritual vision of life. So this is what we have to do, to spread this knowledge no matter what.
Yes, and when we talk about suicide, you wrote in your book, just so for our listener to learn more about the book and the much information it talks about effects on suicide, teen suicide. And when you talk about teen suicide, you place it as the second chapter of the book. Did you do this because this type of suicide is the one that strikes you the most?
Not necessarily, but, I have a teenager, and when I wrote the book, he was actually, going through this phase, not that he was thinking about committing suicide, but he's going through a phase that all of a sudden I start feeling scared about, his views on life, or how he would be able to cope with the difficulties in life. And then I start putting all the things together and getting more information about suicide. And then I guess, consciously speaking, the image of that friend that I lost came through my mind as well. And it was when actually I thought that I had to do something about writing about suicide from the spiritist perspective, to try to give the youth, the adolescents, more knowledge about themselves and more strength in order for them to cope with their difficulties. But also, I'm very affected, actually, very traumatized by the number of suicides of elderly people, and which once more confirmed to us what we have just said, and in the words of Joana de Angelis, that the absence of a more spiritual vision of life. So they come to a point in life that they think, well, this is it. There's nothing else for me to do here, and I'm going to cut short my life. And that's very, very, very sad.
Yeah, and it reminds me of these many teachings in the Spirit's book when they say, is it okay, or Kardec asked this question, talk about elderly suicide, is it okay to cut life short when we know we're going to die, and just to prevent the last, pain or painful feelings? And they say, whatever you do to cut life short is some form of suicide. So we talk about different types of suicide as well, right, Jussara, in Spiritism?
Yes.
Can you tell us more about it?
Okay, and when I started writing the book, I have to confess that I had no idea at that point of how many different types of suicide we had available. And so, suicide through internet, and how to understand the extreme sports as well, and the communications and the facts brought to light through the near-death experience of people that have tried to commit suicide. So there was so much to be researched, and also euthanasia in a way, because although we call it euthanasia, when we decided to actually cut short our lives, it is also a form of suicide. So we are trying to eliminate suffering through death. So once again, demonstrating the lack of knowledge that we have regarding the survival of the soul, and not understanding that the sufferings that we are going through are in fact a precious tool in our path towards our self-purification. So all of that are things that we have to start meditating about, to read more, to understand more. We have cases of spirits that have committed suicide in the book by Allan Kardec, Heaven and Hell. There is a whole chapter just with the showing the communications of those spirits. There is one that I actually put it in the book that is called A Mother and a Son. There was this mother that she had this son that was going through a difficult illness, and he was about in his 20s, and he was in the verge of dying, and she was so desperate in losing him that she looked at him and she said, I'll go meet you there. And she left the house and she killed herself. And later on, when the spirit of the son gave a communication at the Spiritist Society of Paris, the spirit said that he would completely happy if it was not by the fact of her mother committing suicide. And at that point, his mother were not still able to meet him. And her mother, in her turn, also gave a communication, and she was really disappointed and not understanding why she couldn't be with her son. So we see that in order for us to acquire the right of being with our loved ones after death, we have to work on it. We have to go through the things that we have to go through in life and to try to become more spiritual and do the good deeds that we are supposed to do while we are on this earth.
Yeah, Jussara, what you're saying brings us a lot of hope as well, because that's what we understand Spiritism is here for. We would like to share with our listeners that if they want to acquire the book, Those Left Behind, they can go to www.sgny.org, and at the bookstore you'll find the book and get your hands on the many things, including prayers for suicides. We're going to talk about more of this. We're going to go to a short break and be right back with you and our dear Jussara Korngold.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Now in English, the book Missionaries of the Light by the Spirit Andrea Luis, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediceiofamerica.com today.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Spiritist Network, your gateway to on-demand Spiritist videos. www.spiritistnetwork.com.
Join the Third Spiritist Forum of New York on September 25th. The theme is, It is Good to Be Good, featuring the keynote speaker, Dr. Stephen Post, renowned and leading scientist on compassion and health, as well as Dr. Petrillo and Dr. Saloni. More information at www.nvscenter.org. That is www.nvscenter.org.
And now we return to our program.
We are here with Jussara Korngold talking about her book, Those Left Behind, The Understanding Suicide from a Spiritist View. This book is amazing. Listen to this, a message that was channeled in the mediumship meeting of the Spiritist Group of New York in 2004. It's entitled, My Son. Once you departed my tears, my tears have never ceased. My heart fell apart. My still eyes lost in the horizon. It was your choice to leave us behind, to depart without a kiss, not giving us a chance to make you change your mind, thus leaving us in a desert without bliss. Oh, my dear one, my life will never be the same. Where did I fail? Why was I not able to support you and to give you strength to withstand the struggles of life? Oh, flesh of my flesh, rebellious spirit, I wish you could have come to me more often, to open up your heart and to find shelter in my love. Now, my son, my thoughts are only for you. My life is your life, my prayer a single cry of help, so that the merciful Creator may give us the chance to trail the same path again. I will look after you forever. I will assist you like never before, but this time I will not lose you to the dark shadows of despair. God is love, God is forgiving. My love accompanies you now and forever. This is in the book Those Left Behind, a mediumistic message of a mom who lost her son to suicide. She came through the mediumship of Jussara Korngold in the Spiritist group of New York, and she's here to tell us more. So, Jussara, is it true that as life doesn't end, the spirits who committed suicide, they're not lost in hell forever? And actually, there are good and loving spirits, like the mom of this spirit, that is going to be there reaching out to them.
I think this is the greatest comfort that we can find in people that have lost loved ones through suicide, when they understand what it represents, actually, the greatness and the mercy of our Creator. No one is going to be lost to us, especially the loved ones. And even if they have in an act of despair, because one thing that we have to understand is that the majority of people that attempt suicide or commit suicide, they are not really trying to kill themselves. They are trying to kill the pain they are going through. They want to live, but they want to live without that pain that excruciates them. And sometimes that can reverberate through the whole family when we see, like, for instance, you were talking earlier in this program about depression and how it can so deeply impact the whole family. So sometimes it's not that they want to kill themselves. They want to kill the pain that they are feeling and that they are imposing to their whole family. So those spirits are never going to be lost to us. They are going to be in need to go, of course, through regeneration, through a learning process of valuing more life and becoming strong, to be able to cope with situations of life when they will have a new opportunity for reincarnation. But they will be assisted by loving spirits that will be at their side, that will try to rescue them at any moment they show that they are ready to face their problems and to face life once again. So there is no hell, there is no losing those loved ones forever because of one action of despair. God forgives, God gives us multiple, infinite opportunities for us to become pure spirits, as is our destiny to be.
This is one of the most compassionate statements that can be out there. The people who commit suicide, as you said very wisely, they are not there because they want to kill themselves. They want to get rid of their overwhelming pain. And this is a view, right, Jussara, that only Spiritism can give to us. Because people who are experiencing these struggles, they needed to find help with the medical doctors, psychologists, but also the spiritual teachings of Spiritism. And the spiritual teachings of Spiritism are here to tell us about the consequences of suicide. Jussara, what are some of the consequences of suicide? We just heard the story of the inhumane baker, and the teachings that the Spirit said, Lamennais said very clearly, the baker who refused help was actually the one more responsible than the person who committed suicide, the lady. So what would be the spiritual consequences of suicide, as Spiritism says?
Well, the first thing that we see is actually when people are actually thinking about ending their lives, that they are going to go through disappointment, because they will see that life goes on, and they will not be able to end their lives. They may end their physical life, but not their spiritual life. They will, of course, because of the act they have just committed, they will impose some lesions in their perispirit. For instance, if a person kills oneself through a shot in the head, so this area of the spiritual body is going to be compromised for future existence. They, of course, will go through places they are more in tune with their state of mind that is going to be representing a suffering for them. They may go through remembrances and nightmares. They will have, may have still the feeling of committing the act once, again and again, but just for a period of time. And once they actually start getting hold of themselves and start thinking more about what they have just done and start showing signs of regret and the desire to amend themselves, they are going to be immediately rescued and will be able to go through a process where, like we said before, they are going to be receiving more thoroughly education in the spirit realm so that they can come back and go through this process again. Because it's very much like when we are in the school, if we fail a test, we have to go through the test again. And so in the same manner, they will have to go through a test because we do not go through challenges. I prefer normally call challenges instead of suffering. It's just my way of seeing things. So we have to go through these challenges, to the difficulties in life, because they are the ones that are going to give us the tools that we are still missing in order to become a more pure spirit. So if I miss one, if I like in this case, I commit suicide and I try to avoid going through a test, I still need to go through that test to acquire the virtue that it is still not present in me. And that's why, not as a punishment, but as I need to acquire the necessary tools for enlightenment, that they have to come to return again and to go through to other experiences and experiences that will very much resemble the ones that they have failed in the previous life. And that's why sometimes, again, through spiritism, we can understand why all of a sudden a person may feel inclined to cut short their lives or even go through the act and actually commit suicide, because it's something that comes from the past as well. And the memories that they have of having failed and going through the experience again, they don't feel the necessary strength to cope with that, and they fail, and they can fail again.
Exactly, Jussara. And you talked about the book Heaven and Hell as one of the resources for us to be aware of the spiritual consequences. We're going to show to our audience right now the case of the father and the conscript that is narrated in the book, and we'll be right back with you so you can tell us more about the Spiritist view on suicide. Listen to this, dear listener. It's the father and the conscript from the book Heaven and Hell.
An excerpt from the book Heaven and Hell by Allan Kardec, Part 2, Chapter 5, The Father and the Conscript. At the beginning of the war with Italy in 1859, a Paris businessman and father, held in high esteem by all his neighbors, had a son who was drafted into the military. Since he could not exempt his son from the service due to his social position, the idea occurred to him to commit suicide in order to exempt the young man as the sole surviving son of a widow. 1 year later, he was evoked at the Parisian Society at the request of a person who had known him and who wanted to learn about his fate in the spirit world. And so the question was posed to St. Louis before the meeting began. Could you please tell us if it would be possible to evoke the spirit whom we were just talking about?
Yes, and he will be very pleased because it will bring him some relief.
And so the evocation in written form began like this.
Oh, thank you. I'm suffering so much, but it's just... Yet, he will forgive me.
Here, the spirit has difficulty writing. The characters are irregular and badly made. After the word but, he stops and tries in vain to continue. He only manages to make a few indecipherable characters and periods. It is obvious that he could not write the word God. Please fill in the gap with the word you didn't write.
I'm unworthy of it.
You said you were suffering, and there is no doubt that you erred in committing suicide. However, hasn't the reason why you did it brought you any indulgence?
The punishment will not be as long, but the act per se was wrong nonetheless.
Would you describe your punishment?
I'm suffering doubly, in my soul and in my body, even though I'm no longer in the possession of it, like an amputee feels pain in a limb that is no longer there.
Did you commit suicide solely to exempt your son, or were there other reasons?
I was completely led by paternal love, though wrongly so. In consideration for this, my punishment will be shortened.
Do you know when your suffering will end?
No, I don't, but I have the assurance it finally will, which is a relief for me.
A little while ago, you were unable to write the word God, but we have seen greatly suffering spirits write it. Is this part of your punishment?
I will be able to write it after making great efforts to repent.
Well then, make such efforts and try to write it. We are sure that if you succeed in doing so, it will bring you relief. And so, the spirit ended up writing the following phrase in crude, irregular, and shaky characters.
God is very good.
We are grateful that you came in response to our evocation, and we will pray for you, asking God to be merciful towards you.
Yes, please, if you would.
And so, another question was posed to St. Louis. Would you give us your personal appraisal about the spirit whom we have just evoked?
This spirit is suffering justly, for he lacked trust in God, a wrong that is always punishable. The punishment would be terrible and very long if it were not mitigated by the praiseworthy motive of keeping his son from being exposed to death in war. God, who is just and sees the depths of the heart, is only punishing this man according to his deeds.
And so Kardec goes on to explain. At first glance, this suicide might seem excusable, since it may be regarded as an act of self-sacrifice. Actually, though, this is not entirely correct. As St. Louis stated, this man lacked trust in God. Perhaps his action prevented his son's destiny from being fulfilled. Moreover, he could not be certain that his son would have died in battle, and maybe this career would have given him an opportunity to do something that would have been useful for his evolution. The father's intentions were undoubtedly good and will be taken into account. Intention mitigates a bad deed and merits indulgence, but it does not keep evil from being evil nonetheless. Otherwise, one could find an excuse for any misdeed whatsoever. One could even murder under the pretext of rendering a service. Would a mother who kills her son in order for him to go straight to heaven be less guilty for having done so with good intentions? According to such a theory, one could justify all the crimes that have been committed as a result of the blind fanaticism of religious wars. In principle, humans do not have the right to dispose of their own life, for it has been given to them because of the duties they are to fulfill while on earth, a sufficient reason for them not to intentionally shorten their life under any pretext. But since they have free will, no one can keep them from doing so, although they will always suffer the consequences. The suicide most severely punished is the one that results from the desperation of seeking to evade life's miseries. These miseries are the expiations and trials at the same time, and withdrawing from them is to refuse the task one has accepted, and sometimes even the mission one must fulfill. Suicide does not consist solely in the intentional act that produces instant death. Suicide occurs whenever anything is consciously done that will prematurely hasten the extinction of the vital forces. An act is not regarded as suicide when out of self-sacrifice one exposes oneself to death in order to save another person's life. First, because in that case, there is no premeditated intention to withdraw from life. Second, because there is no danger from which Providence will not rescue us if our time has not yet come. Death, under such circumstances, is a meritorious sacrifice because it is a selfless act on behalf of someone else.
How compelling the story of the Father and the conscript on the book Heaven and Hell. In the teachings, we learn that basically we need to have trust in God. And as the Spirit Anderson said in the book Among Brothers of Other Lands by Chico Xavier, we should be patient, he says, in all tribulations. And faith is the result of daily trust. Let us repeat this. Faith is the result of daily trust. So we need to have trust in God every day. And Jussara Korngold, who is this author of the book, Those Left Behind, the also spiritist who has been doing so many good things in the New York and the spiritist movement in the U.S. and the world. She's here with us to teach us more about the spiritist view. She said previously in a very wise manner, the people who commit suicide, they don't want to kill themselves. What they want is to get rid of that overwhelming pain. We don't want to be in pain. That doesn't excuse ourselves when we commit that act, because in Spiritism, it is considered a transgression of God's laws. But God is loving. As she said, God is here to help us, and there are other beings in the afterlife helping us. So, Jussara, how can Spiritism help those who are thinking of suicide?
Well, the main importance of the Spiritism at their point in their lives is actually to make them understand why they are going through that hardship. Because most of the time is also what makes us rebel against the challenges, the problems we go through life, is because we do not understand why we are going through that. We think that, if we do believe in God, if we have any kind of religion, that maybe we are being punished, arbitrarily. And then through Spiritism, we start understanding that nothing happens to us by chance, that everything that we are going through in this life was very well planned and agreed by the Spirit itself before reincarnation to come, and as we said before, to go through situations in one's life that would propitiate them the possibility of spiritual growth. So once they understand that the suffering was not something that was imposed to them arbitrarily, that they do not deserve that there is no reason for them to go through that, they start having more patience and resignation toward the situation. So now I understand that I am here, that my story continues, and that it had a beginning much earlier before this present incarnation, and that one chapter after the next, I will be going through these experiences towards our Heavenly Father. So with Spiritism in this point will give them the certainty that, first of all, they are going through this because it's necessary for them, is necessary for their growth. Very much when we ask or take our children to school. Sometimes they don't want to go to school and they want to be home and just playing, but it's necessary for them, it's necessary for their growth, for their education. In the same manner, we have to go through things in life that are necessary for our growth, for our education. So the first point is that we start understanding that it's not by chance that we are going through that. And secondly, we start understanding that we are always going to be assisted by the good spirits, by our loved ones, not only in this life that are together with us during this life, but also the ones that have departed. So we always have a spiritual assistance. There is this beautiful message from the footprints on the sand that tells about the story of this man that in retrospect he looks at his life and he's together with Jesus, and he starts looking at his life and analyzing his life through the footprints in the sand, and then all of a sudden we realize that in certain periods of his life there is just one footprint, and and he asks Jesus, well, now I realize that in this period of my life, and actually the most difficult ones, I was alone. There was just one footprint in the sand. And then Jesus tells him, well, it's not because you were alone, but because I was carrying you in my lap. And so many times I think we complain about situations and even thinking that we have been abandoned by God and by everyone else, when actually is when they are protecting us the most. And many times as well, we complain about life because we don't have this spiritual perspective. So with Spiritism, we start understanding that we are not alone, that we do not have to cope with those difficult situations alone, and that God and the good spirits are always with us.
Yeah, Jussara, there is a lot to do. As Reese Butler said, he called the Spiritist community to join forces so we can fight this beautiful fight of reaching out to those people, because as he said, 1 million people commit suicide on Earth, and only 10% are given opportunities. So here is Spiritism to help out. Would you say, Jussara, that Spiritism also has helpful tools for the families who stayed here and are left distraught by the feelings of having lost somebody in such a dramatic way?
Oh, absolutely, because first of all, instead of having the idea that they are gone forever, they will start understanding that these loved ones are not lost to them, that they will be having the opportunity of reuniting with them, that life goes on, that their spirits continue existing, and that they very much like the message that you read at the beginning of our interview here, presentation here, about the mother that writes about the son, that she is going to have other opportunities to care more, to be more, and to try to help those that are weak. So with Spiritism, they will understand that first of all, there is no not the punishment, because we understand that suicide for certain religions that are considered to be a mortal sin. They are not even entitled to a religious burial. So this is also imposes a lot of stress to the family. So not only they are going to lose their loved ones, but they are going to be forever doomed in hell. And now Spiritism tells, no, they are the children of God, like we all are. They are going to be assisted. You are going to have the opportunity of being with them again. And now you can still continue helping them through your prayers. So pray to them so that they can have the necessary strength to overcome the situation they put themselves into. And little by little, they will be growing, and they will be, again, in condition to be with us and to continue this, nourishing this love that goes from one life to the next. So it's a great comfort to the family as well that have lost loved ones through suicide.
Yeah, Jussara. We are going to give a minute of break, and we'll be right back with Jussara Korngold and the Spiritist view on suicide.
We will return to our program after these messages.
If you have any questions or comments, please call Kardec Radio at 858-769-4705.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Now in English, the book Missionaries of the Light by the Spirit Andrea Luis, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediceiofamerica.com today. Now in English, the book Action and Reaction by the Spirit Andrea Luis, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediceiofamerica.com today.
And now we return to our program.
We are here with Jussara Korngold, who is teaching us about the Spiritist view on suicide. It's so consoling, as she says. We should be compassionate because those who cut their lives short, they did it out of extreme anguish and pain. Still, they will need to reap the sowing of their actions. And the Spirit's book has a lot to teach us. Jussara, we have a caller here who has a question. She is Dr. Yasko Arakawa, and I'm going to relay the question to you. 1 second.
Okay.
Hi, Yasko. Thank you for being with us.
Hi. Oh, wonderful, Jussara. Thank you for being with us. You talked a little earlier that euthanasia being some form of suicide. It comes to my mind that we humans, we are having more and more pets in our home as a company, and euthanasia being considered okay or even a humane way to treat the animals. How we explain, especially to our children, this apparent controversial act.
Okay, hello? This is a very okay.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Have you got
it?
Yes. So comparing the euthanasia in the animals versus human beings. Well, for starters, we understand in Spiritism that animals have not yet reached what we call the ability of reasoning, of deciding for themselves what they have to go through. And also, we know that animals, they do not have what we call karma, or they do not have to make amends for, their previous lives, which is different in the case of human beings. So the human beings, when we are going through the situations that put us in this the spot of deciding or not whether we are going through to decide for a euthanasia, we have to understand that everything is referring to our previous existence, and so it experiences that we have to go through, that we have to make amends, and that we have to learn through that period. The animal is not going to be learning through the spirit of suffering. So that's why we still use this resource for the animal, and is not recommended for the human being. The human being, every second of our life counts, and every second is important for us to make a decision about our lives and our future, and especially because we know that life goes on, and instead of departing with a certain emotion, a certain feeling, if I have a extra few minutes of life, I may resolve that with myself or with a family member. So every minute is very precious. But it's actually, I understand the question, and I do believe that it's going to be very hard for us to try to explain that to children.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Jussara. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yasko, for being with us. And Jussara, what, in these final moments of the program, we'd like to pass the word to you so you can give your final comments and actually a final message to the ones who are listening to Kardec Radio.
Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to thank very much for this opportunity. I think it's a very laudable thing that Kardec Radio is doing, and I want to congratulate all the producers of the show for doing that, for doing this work of sacrifice and reaching out to each and everyone. That's why it's very important for us to spread the news, to actually to tell people about opportunities that they can have, or start learning about a different perspective. We have been too much enveloped just by materiality sometimes, just by delusions and the current problems that we face, and we forget that we are this light being, this eternal being that we call, and that we are children of God, that our destiny is a great one. And no matter what we are going through life, if we always keep in mind that we have all the assistance, all the good presence that is necessary to help us if we just reach to them. So it's important for us now to start reaching for the spiritual values, to reach for spirituality and for the assistance of this spirit, and to understand that we all have gone through pain in life. It's part of this earth. It's part of our spiritual growing process. And we have overcome them. So they also shall pass. So this is, I think, the message that we have to keep within ourselves. There is nothing more valuable than life, than this opportunity that we are having now of being in this earth and not only accomplish the mission, the lessons that we have to accomplish, but also to help in the growth, the general growth of our planet. And we can do that as co-creators, working in the land of the Lord. So we have to start thinking about that, meditating about the spiritual values, and to start to stop just looking at the black dot that we have in front of us and start counting our blessings, because we have so much to be blessed for. We have so many possibilities, so many opportunities, so many blessings that come to us, and because of that, we should be very thankful to our Creator, to our life, to our presence in this planet, and to make it actually be a difference in the life of others. So if I just to end, there is compelling testimony that I read once about Stephen Hawking, when he was faced with the illness that he had to go through all his life, and he knew it was going to be really bad, and then he said, well, I only have two choices. Either I end my life now, or I do the following I will dedicate the rest of the life, the short life that I may have, to humanity. And that was such a beautiful choice. And I'm sure he never imagined that he was going to live that long. And this is what God does with us. He uses us to inspire others and to show, do your part, do your deed, do the good deeds that you have to do. And I'm here looking for you and helping you and supporting you to gather more strength and to grow and to live this life as a victorious spirit as my child.
Oh, Jussara, thank you so much for being with us, especially for becoming an advocate to the cause of prevention of suicide. Thank you so much, and we hope you to come back to the show in the very near future to share much more. Thank you, Jussara.
Thank you.
So, dear listener, this show is about hope. Though we're talking about suicide, it's all about hope. As the Spirit Anderson said in page 108 of the book Among Brothers of Other Lands by the medium Chico Xavier and Valdo Vieira, many spirits wrote in that book. It's published by the International Spiritist Council, and he says we should be patient in all tribulations of life. Faith is the result of daily trust. How are we doing in regard to our trust in God? Jussara Korngold wisely advised us we needed to work more on our spiritual values. Reincarnation is so short. What is 100 years in eternity, immortality? It's nothing. And it's so important for us to work on this. But moreover, to talk about suicide and spiritism, we also needed to pay a tribute to the great medium Ivone Pereira from Brazil, when in the mid-20th century, she was the medium of this amazing book, Memories of a Suicidal Spirit. It's probably under translation, will be published soon by International Spiritist Council. It's a book written in Portuguese, and it talks about the ins and outs of it. And the beautiful part of the book, besides many others, the highlight, is that there is a team of rescuers led by Mother Mary. It's very moving, dear listener. It's moving because we're not alone. Not even when we commit suicide. And Mother Mary is there. She's there to reach out to all of us, to rescue us, and to give us another opportunity. So read more about this. And in the Spirit's book, like in question 952, suicide is not only about this one extreme action. There is what the Spirits called moral suicide. What is it? When Allan Kardec asked, is it considered suicide for those who die as victims of the abuse of their own passions, which they knew would hasten their end, but which they could no longer resist because habit turned their passions into true physical needs? The answer of the Spirits was, it's moral suicide. Don't you see that they are doubly guilty in such a case? They lack courage and yield to brutishness. Moreover, they forgot about God. So we cannot judge. We cannot judge those who committed suicide because sometimes we don't make that extreme act, but we actually are committing moral suicide. If we have passions and vices that are leading us to burn these vital fluid by eating too much, by partying too much, by spending resources, by not sleeping the much that you need, we are committing a moral suicide. By being too angry, we're burning the vitality. We're being moral suicidal spirits. We don't want that. So share the news. So now we're going to share with you, if you're feeling suicidal, or if you know somebody who is feeling suicidal, find help. Physicians are here to help. Psychologists are here to help. We need help. And spiritist centers are great resources for help as well. Plus, there are the resources that Reese Butler shared with us. And he actually called us to action. If you're not feeling suicidal, or if you were, go help out others who are feeling so. Let us help. In the hotline, Hopeline.com, you can find resources to become a volunteer. You can get the training online, be certified, and reach out to those, because there are a million people a year who are struggling with these issues, and they are dying because of suicide. So now let us wrap up with a prayer. Prayer for suicides, because in the Gospel according to Spiritism, in the last chapter, which is chapter 28, Allan Kardec lays out a series of prayers, and one of them is for suicide. We need to pray for suicidal spirits, like Yvonne Pereira did, like Divaldo Franco, Chico Xavier, Raul Teixeira, many of the wise spiritists. Let's give our hand by praying as well. By praying, we can reach out to many. And in a part of the prayer, it says, "Oh God, we know the fate reserved for those who violate your laws by intentionally shortening their lives. But we also know that your mercy is infinite. Deign to extend it over the soul of all those who committed suicide. May our prayers and your commiseration soften their bitterness of their suffering for not having had the courage to await the end of their trials. O good spirits, whose mission is to assist the unfortunates, take these suicidal spirits under your watch care. Inspire them with your repentance for their wrong, and may your assistance give them the strength to more resignedly bear the new trials that they will have to endure to repair it. Keep from them evil spirits who may once again lead them into evil and prolong their suffering by causing them to lose the fruit of their future trials. And you, whose misfortune is the object of our prayers, may our commiseration soften your bitterness and awaken in you hope for a better future. That future is in your hands. Trust in the goodness of God, whose bosom is open to all those who repent, while remaining shut only to hardened hearts. Dear listener, let us reach out to those who are feeling depressed and suicidal. So next show, in next week, is about this loving connection that doesn't end with death. It's about the eternal bonds of love. We're going to have here Dr. Claudio Petrillo and Dr. Silvano Plock and their beautiful story about their son who departed and how they continue that relationship, sharing with all of us in the many books, starting with Eternal Bonds of Love. May God bless us all.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.